everybody, Janae here. I am coming to you with a book review, a book talk, and this will not have any spoilers in it. And the book that I'm going to talk about today is Necessary Lies by Diane Chamberlain. When I first read this book, last week when I read it, I put it down when I was done and I immediately gave it 5 stars. And that review has not changed. I thought this was a fantastic book. It was really, really good. The main topic of this book is the voluntary and involuntary sterilization that happened to thousands of men and women in North Carolina. It actually happened, I'm going to put this book down now. It actually happened in several states in our country, but North Carolina had it going on the longest. And so that's the main topic of this book and how that affects the lives of the characters. It is 1960 and it is in North Carolina, and so there is a lot of racial tension, there is a lot of class tension, and I just thought this book did an excellent job of picking those details out and kind of putting them on display and letting the reader judge for themselves, is this okay? So you have a bunch of social workers who are basically going in and determining whether their clients should be sterilized, and this can be with or without their client's consent. And so it gets really into agency and who deserves to have agency over themselves. There is a lot of talk about, or discussion, commentary, and not through exposition, but just through the telling of the story. Like I mentioned, the author talks about class. She talks about race. She talks about what it means to be progressive, especially in the 1960s, when I think we have a very different idea of what it means to be progressive in this day and age, but she kind of puts it back in a historical lens and says, this is where a lot of people are coming from. And I want to talk a little bit about Jane here, because I think Diane Chamberlain does a really good job with, like I said, showing us what progressivism meant back in 1960, especially for, a newly married, fairly well-off white woman to want to work with poor white people and to want to work with black people. It was very progressive of her, and she was scared a lot. She had preconceived notions of the people that she would be working with, and as she worked with them and they became more human to her, she began to relate to them a lot better, and to really ask questions that were for their benefit as opposed to the benefit of the greater good, which is brought up a lot in this book. So I just thought that was a really interesting commentary. Jane was able to eventually kind of question what was happening, because she got to know her clients, and she got to know them in a way that the other social workers frowned upon. They thought she was getting too close to them, and I understand that in the social services field, in the psychology field, things like that, you aren't supposed to get super close to your clients because they need an objective presence, but they also need someone that sees them as human beings. And I think that is what a lot of the social workers in this story were missing. They saw them kind of as social problems as opposed to human beings who are all connected to one another and have feelings and thoughts and aspirations and dreams. Those things didn't matter as long as, the social workers felt like they were doing what would be best for the entire community, and I think that's a really hard place to be in. But I think it's a super important point in this book that when you assume agency over someone else, when you are their social worker, when you are kind of controlling the things that they have and the things that they don't have, you have to think about the resources of the community, but you also have to humanize the people that you're working with. There's also a discussion, in my opinion, on bravery and loyalty and family and manipulation and lots of different things that can happen when you have a lot of families living together, and what that can mean for those people. And ultimately, the book left me with 2 kind of overall questions and things to think about. And I think that, this was the crux of the story. So the first is, what happens when those in authority demand or ask for a level of trust that they don't end up deserving or that they haven't earned? And then also, when you have authority over someone, What effect does not knowing them have over the way that you can advocate for them and the things that you think that you believe are necessary for them? So those were the really big questions that I was left with after this book, and not questions that the book left me with necessarily, but questions that I kind of pulled from the pages, and really think that are at the core of the novel as it was written. I think some very deliberate decisions were made around race and gender and social class and things like that of the characters in the book. I will say, and this is not a spoiler in any way, that Ivy, as I mentioned, and her family are the Harts. And then you have the black family that lives on the farm are the Jordans. And I think that some of the things that happened to the Harts had to happen to them for Jane to really be able to relate and empathize. And that's another part of the story. Could Jane have really taken up this cause if she thought it was only happening to the black family? And that's not to say that Jane was necessarily a racist. I think she was, she did her job and she went in, and even though she was afraid at first because of some racist things that she had just kind of grown up hearing and, other people telling her, she had thoughts, but she was able to kind of alleviate those thoughts, and modify them through time. But it's just a question that I have as to whether she would have jumped in full force if some of the things that happened to the Harts had happened to the Jordans. Could she have seen herself in the Jordans the way she could in the Harts? And again, she did her job well with both families, and I don't think, I'm not saying that she wouldn't have, but I think the choice was made deliberately to make certain people deal with certain issues so that Jane could relate a little bit better. And so I don't know. I think it's a great book, and something that people should really, really, get into and start reading and understanding and knowing about. Overall, I just want to say that this was a great book. There were great characters. They were well-rounded. The setting, the descriptions of where they were was great. It talked a lot about just what it means, again, to have agency, to have authority, to have that stripped away, to be loyal to someone, to, understand the morally gray areas of a person and still love and respect them anyway because of the other parts of them, and understanding that people are not only one part of themselves, they are whole people. And when you strip away someone's humanity because of a category that they belong to, whether that be their race, whether that be their gender, whether that be their social class, what an injustice you're doing to not only them, but to the community around them. We need people who are going to build people up and not tell people what it is that they cannot do. When you tell someone what they can do, it just makes such a big difference over telling them what they can't do. And especially when you don't even tell them, I think that's a level of disrespect and humanity stripping that we see so often, but that I think we're a little bit desensitized to. And this book does a really good job of bringing forward those thoughts and bringing forward that commentary in a super accessible and, relatable way. And I really appreciate this book for doing that. But again, I think this was a great, great story. And yeah, I would recommend it to anyone. I think it's important for people to read things like this. But other than that, I am just going to say goodbye, say thank you for being here. Thank you for spending time with me. You don't have to do it, and you're here anyway. I greatly, greatly appreciate you. And yeah, I hope you have a great week, weekend, day, night, whatever it is when you are watching this video. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.